Hello, I'm Marc Epstein. My co-author, Kirk Hanson, and I have just completed a book called Rotten: Why Corporate Misconduct Continues and What to Do About it. It addresses a critical challenge facing individual companies and the business world as a global system. It makes specific recommendations on how to resolve it. Kirk and I would like to answer one of the most asked questions about the book.
Marc and I, having worked with over 100 companies on the design of corporate ethics programs, are both disappointed that the work we've done before has not solved the problem of corporate misconduct. But I think we have a perspective on what kinds of changes might really make a difference today. And we think that only with a radical reimagining of the task of corporate ethics programs can we really make headway against the problem of misconduct. We lay out in our book 10 steps, 10 measures that we think companies have to take to begin to reduce the frequency of corporate misconduct. I'll focus on just two that are particularly important to me. The first one is around the concept of corporate purpose. We believe that it's impossible for a company to really constrain corporate misconduct if the company's sole motivation is profit, shareholder value. That only a company that embraces a broader purpose, a purpose that is both social and economic, can the company communicate a message to the employees that it really wants ethical conduct and not to engage in misconduct. The definition of this purpose has been a big challenge in business. A few companies have gotten it right, but very few really compared to the number of large companies there are in the world. So this is a major task that we believe is first on the agenda. We obviously believe in strong executive leadership, and the executive leadership communicates to the entire organization the importance of that social mission and the importance of ethical behavior. One other one that I am particularly fond of, I believe it makes a difference who's at the table when you make difficult ethical choices. The senior corporate ethics officer in most companies is considered to be a staff officer and is rarely at the table when major strategic issues that may have big ethical content are decided. And so one of the things we recommend is that either the chief ethics officer or some other senior executive is given a seat at the table when the very senior management sits down to decide whether to enter a particular market like China, or whether to go into a new product area, or whether to implement a new compensation system. Those are the moments at which ethics really has traction in making sure that the company doesn't set itself up for misconduct in the future. Marc, what are the ones that you were most interested in?
So I agree with yours, and it's interesting that some of the things you talked about on purpose relate to the people and really the way people think about this. And but I also think there's also things within the organization in terms of establishing the controls and the mechanisms and the systems. So for me, I've spent a lot of my career focusing on corporate governance and what the leadership and controls that can be in place. And the processes that are in place. And some of those are incentives. You mentioned, when you think about Wells Fargo, which we talk about in the book, a lot of the misconduct there was caused by the incentive system that was established by Wells Fargo leadership, that they were trying to encourage what they called cross-selling. But this was more than cross-selling. It really encouraged people to figure out how to increase their own compensation. And to do that, it encouraged misconduct. So I think one has to look at incentive system, reward systems, and more broadly, systems and structures in the organization that can provide guides and incentives for good behavior.
And
Another,
our recommendation in the book is that you need to you need to assess all of the existing systems for their ethical incentives, and then put something in place that looks at every new proposed system for its ethical implications.
right, and I think that's true in terms of systems. I think it's even true more broadly in terms of scanning the environment. So what there should be is a scanning function which involves not only systems and incentives in place, but more broadly, new strategies, new markets, new technologies, and thinking about what the implications are for ethics and morals, and the kinds of challenges they might create for the organization. And if you do this scanning in advance and you think about these things in advance, you're more likely to avoid some of the problems and challenges that companies have gotten themselves into, and be thinking about what kinds of controls you can put in place to resist some of the temptations that happen in business.